as I always have. I'm live. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Excellent. Excellent. AV, good. Good to know. I'm trying something a little different today. So all of you are going to have to bear with me because I want to show some comics. I've been trying to figure out a second angle, but then I realized that the microphone that I use for all of these live streams wouldn't get there. So while I was showing you those comics, I wouldn't be able to talk, or I'd be able to talk, but you wouldn't be able to hear me. And so I had to figure that out, and I had to do that in the last 10 minutes because I was thinking of, I don't know, this is just me killing time. Hello from Israel. Good to see everyone. Hello from Spain. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. So as I was just answering a question no one had asked, I've tried a new microphone setup in which I have a mic in front of me that's on a really long cable. So I should be able to take this across the table with me if I get to showing you comics separately from this shot. There will be a little bit of handling noise because it's sensitive, so I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum. Hello, good to see everyone. So I'm just going to give people a minute or two to catch up, and everyone is telling me that the audio and video is good, so I'm good to go with that. All right. Hello from Mumbai. Good to see you. Okay, so this is a bit of an impromptu live stream, really. Usually I have an idea of what I want to do ahead of time, but it got to the point where I wanted to make a video about some new arrivals and recent reads, a series of videos that I often make on this channel. But because it's been so long since I've made regular videos for this channel, and because we've been moving and doing all of these things, I've got quite a backlog of videos that I want to make and videos that I've been planning, and that includes the recent reads, new acquisitions videos, where I do have a bunch of new acquisitions which I have not yet read, and then I have a bunch of books that I have read that I want to talk about. And then I have this weird mixture because not only have I, and this is the reason for this video, not only have I been able to get my hands on some books that I'm really excited about reading, but people have generously sent me comics, as they have done in the past, from all across the place. And I wanted to talk about these comics, and there were a couple of packages that I had to open, and I'll get into the reasons why, and a couple of packages that I have not yet opened, partly because especially when you're moving, it's good if something is already packed up and wrapped up, and I didn't want to open it up and then lose whatever was in it in the chaos of moving, or at least misplace it and don't know where they are. So I just kept them in boxes for that reason. And then a couple of packages that arrived after we'd moved, I figured this would be a good opportunity for a video in which I unbox them, as I have done before. So all of this is the reason why I've gotten to this video, which is a live stream, but I thought maybe I can share some of the things that I have opened, as well as open some of the things that I have not yet opened while chatting with all of you. I know that everyone. Hello from rainy Yorkshire. I'm always very excited about the live chat and conversations that go on during these live streams. But I have also been told that, well, you know, when you're on camera, you should be talking to us and saying things, not stopping in the middle and just reading the questions and getting lost in the chat, which is a very fair critique of a live stream. You don't want to sit there and watch someone else read what you've written. So I'm going to try and keep myself from getting too distracted by the comments and the questions. Leave that for all of you to interact with each other and comment about the things that I'm talking about, and maybe I'll check in on the comments from time to time. And Ashwita, my wife, those of you who do not know, serves as a moderator for these. Thank you very much. So she'll be answering some questions. There are a lot of long-time viewers and close friends of the channel in the chat that I can see, so maybe they'll be gracious enough to step in and answer some questions as they have in the past. And if you have questions specific to the things that I'm talking about today, I think we'll prioritize those instead of a general Q&A, because otherwise things can get a little lost and chaotic. I do have general Q&A live streams. I just had one a couple of weeks ago, which is why I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to talk about these books, because I just answered a whole bunch of questions. We just had that kind of a chat, and now we can talk specifically about these comics. So first of all, I would like to say that I continue to be extremely grateful is sort of an understatement. I'm in shock most of the time that people have the kind of generosity and kindness to send me stuff, especially because I know that it's expensive to mail things internationally, but even domestically, the idea that someone would be thinking about me and putting together this package of comics for things that they think I should read, that I can't get my hands on over here or haven't thought of trying, whatever the reason, it's just a sort of generosity that always affects me. So thank you very much, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching it later. If you are someone that I'm going to talk about right now, thank you very much. I'm really grateful. And I also am very happy with all the communications that I have with all of you in various forms. I have not a very big social media presence. I'm not very good at it, and YouTube is really the only thing that I've done, and that too very reluctantly. I keep making the joke to those who know me that I don't like looking at my face and hearing my voice, and now I have ended up with a hobby in which I have to edit endless videos of me making mistakes and just looping through that and looking at my expressions all the time. So it's already a little it's been uncomfortable, but I've gotten used to it and I've become more accommodating of that. But in other social media, I've started to spend a little bit more time online chatting with people and conversing with people, which I didn't used to do before. So that's also it's a change that I'm quite surprised about myself, but it's all because of the wonderful conversations and the people that I have encountered because of this channel, and other people that I know online from Facebook groups and chat and Discord server. These are just things that I am enjoying more and more. So it's all part and parcel, I think, of this kind of celebration of comics that have been sent to me based on conversation, based on getting to know each other over all these distances. I mean, I would say that, yeah, I have not met face to face any of the people who have sent me any of these things. There are people I've known for a long time, and I have talked with them, conversed with them online, but never face to face. So that's just amazing. Well, very good to see everyone. Thank you if you're just joining us. I've just been blathering a little bit about the reasons for this live stream and how it came to be very impromptu, and also talking a little bit about a new microphone setup and pardon the noise and things like that. Happy to see everyone here, and let's get started because I have a bunch of packages back here. I don't think you can see them on the screen. I'm on some different screen, but they're over here, and I've got my phone set up. So for certain things, I might want to put that onto the side. So if you think you want a closer look at something, try and put it in the chat, and I will see if it's related. As I said, if it's related over here, I'll try and accommodate that. So I'm just going to pop the chat out right now. Make sure I have it on the other screen so I can check my framing at the same time as the conversations. And let's get started. This is quite a bunch of comics that we have over here. They've come from all over the place. And the very first one, over here, let's see if I've got the right, missed it again. There we go. I'm not gonna, there's an address over here, so I don't want to reveal that, but the first package that I have over here is from Caleb Sotelo in Oregon. So thank you very much, Caleb. What Caleb has sent me, and this is really wonderful, is a homemade comic that he made. It is, as it says over here, sorry about that noise, it's a first edition of a limited print of the first comic by Caleb. So I am extremely touched that you have sent me such a limited edition. This is a handmade zine type of comic, replicated, saddle stitched, put together. And this was a sweet, gentle little story about a boy making a new friend at the library and introducing that new friend to comics and graphic novels. And their friend was not aware that there were comics in book form and in the library, and that they had such a range. And the whole thing is just about these two people meeting, encountering each other, one introducing the other to comics, them checking out a bunch of stuff from the library, and then spending a very pleasant time reading. It was a very pleasant comic to read, and the kindness of the story is reflected in the fact that someone, as I said, put together their comic and packaged it and sent it to me all the way from Oregon, the United States. So thank you very much, Caleb. This was really touching, both the story and the gesture. So that's our first package of this evening. The second package over here, I know that I titled this video what our viewers have sent us, but the second package is from my friend Alok, Dr. Alok Joshi of Mumbai, and I don't actually know if he's a viewer of this channel. He maybe isn't, but I've known him for a long time, again, only online. We've chatted and talked together in many ways, and he puts together these care packages and sends them out to people. And in this is viewers from India will recognize Volkswagen's packaging. So recycle your packaging. Never need to throw anything away if you're going to use it for things that you send out. And this is a full care package of comics and original art by Alok himself that he has sent to me. And I think what's unique about this package is the fact that Alok is... I'm just going to get rid of this so it doesn't make this noise. Right. Alok is famous amongst the people who know him for finding ridiculous, incredible deals. And he finds these deals because of his incredible network of street sellers and small bookstores and people who deal with like recycled paper, what we call raddiwalas or kabadiwalas in India. And he's able to find comics in places that none of us would even think to look. And he finds them at bargain prices. They're often very well loved, used condition, but this is a package of exactly those kind of books. And if I'm wrong, someone should let me know. But the way that he is able to find things and then I guess curate things according to that is demonstrated right here. So here we have a comic from Drawn and Quarterly that I've never heard of, No Love Lost. And you can tell from the condition of these comics that they're not coming to you from a fancy collection or from Mylar bags and things like that. But I have never heard of this creator or this comic, and let alone thought that it would be findable on the streets of Bombay or Mumbai. So there you go. This. I have looked through it. This is an interesting comic. It's an indie, as you would expect from Drawn and Quarterly, thing that reminded me a lot of the art and the works of Debbie Dreschler, who wrote Nowhere, and a bit of Julie Doucette, but not quite as harsh or jagged in both content and art style. But this is something that I have not yet read, but I really look forward to it. And that's the first book in this package. Also in this package is this Tales from the Crypt volume from Paper Cuts. Now, I've obviously seen Tales of the Crypt reprints on a number of occasions and from a number of publishers, but I did not know that Paper Cuts published Tales from the Crypt as well. Now, looking through this, I do not believe, and you can, if people know, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't believe that these Tales from the Crypt are reprints of originals. I think this is paper cuts doing it themselves, like the Classics Illustrated that they commissioned after reprinting the older Classics editions, but Classics Illustrated. But I could be wrong about that. It might be a reprint. I haven't gone into the copyright information or researched this. I've read a couple of the stories in here, which were interesting. Like I think with most anthologies, you will have a variety of different styles and a variety of different things. But what was interesting to me were these ads in the back and extracts from other Paper Cuts comics from their Classics Illustrated series, including Rick Geary's adaptation of H.G. Wells's The Invisible Man, which is a fantastic adaptation. I'm a big fan of Rick Geary, and this art style with these colors work really well. I find him very charming, and I find his take on The Invisible Man to be a very charming one. I do have that book, but I always like seeing ads for books that I enjoy in other books. So I like looking at old comics that are advertising Watchmen or other classic comics as they were coming out, a 12-issue series. Not having been there on the ground at that time, I always like those kind of references. And I like, ever since I was a kid, I've always liked looking at books being advertised in the books that you've read, which publishers used to do also by the same author, or also in this series of crime fiction, etc., and those kind of things. So you've got ads over here for the Paper Cuts reprinted adaptations, as well as Hardy Boys adaptations alongside the Classics Illustrated. And it looks like a nice, unique pocketbook-sized anthology. Also, he has sent me a bunch of single issues. Now, single issues in India are available, but they're not available in the same way because we don't have comic book stores dedicated to them. You might find like the most recent Marvel DC singles maybe in a store, but they're usually very expensive, imported. You're certainly not able to follow runs, but some people like Alok are able to source these, are able to find these, which might be remaindered copies from the US shipped over to India. I have no idea how these end up here. Who ordered them? Who orders single issues, or do people just buy them in bulk at some point of time? It's something that's always intrigued me, and it's particularly intriguing when it is Usagi Yojimbo. So, for example, this is the very first Dark Horse issue of Usagi Yojimbo. That's a pretty cool issue to find on the streets of Bombay. So, there we go. That's the first one. So Usagi Yojimbo launched at Dark Horse with a mini series of 3 issues. So that's why it says 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3 followed, and then it was number 4, and then it ran for 300 or more issues at Dark Horse. So it all started over here, and here's a copy that Alok found in Bombay. He also found copies of issue number 31 of Usagi Yojimbo. You've got, wait, hold on, this one's 31, this one is 34, 31, 34, number 57, number 48, and of course the number 1 that we just looked at. So sorry, so that's crazy, and they're in decent condition. They're completely readable. The staples are not rusted or torn. I mean, they are worn, so they wouldn't be valuable as a collect. But the fact that Usagi Yojimbo is such a good read in individual volumes as well makes these fantastic things to be able to pick up. And I'm really happy to see that these are things, however rare they may be, that is just something that you can pick up on the streets. I wouldn't have thought this would be possible for Usagi Yojimbo, for example, maybe Superman, maybe Batman, things that have a certain type of fame. So I love the idea of being able to find these as you walk around. I don't leave my house very much. I often joke, but these are the rewards for doing so. Also included in this care package from Alok are 3 issues of Amazing Man. Now, I have to admit, I have never heard of Amazing Man, but Alok has often praised this as one of the best comics series that he's read. I mean, he's read a lot. His knowledge is encyclopedic, and so he's got a lot of favorites. But I think this is one of the things that he has often considered a vastly underrated and overlooked comic, especially in its deconstruction of superhero comics, from what I gather. So I'm really looking forward to checking out my very first issues of Amazing Man. Again, hot off the streets of Bombay. Black and white Usagi. Yes, black and white. Way back in the day, Usagi Yojimbo used to be published in black and white. Gather round, children. There is a color special from Dark Horse for Usagi, but as Arindam points out in the comments, these are black and white issues. The Mirage run of 16 issues that was just before the Dark Horse and after the Fantagraphics was a completely color series for issue issue, but Fantagraphics and Dark Horse just had the colors, just had the black and white issues and just color specials is what I meant to say. Let's see. Any questions about any of this over here? He's a local celebrity in the country. He's a celebrity for us who know him. I do believe that there have been things written about him and his collection. He has a mammoth collection of comic books, but one of the most interesting things is that it's not, like behind glass and preserved. It's not like a museum type of collection. It's in bags and suitcases and piled to the ceiling. It's incredible, and his knowledge of particularly Marvel and DC stuff is phenomenal, especially for someone like me who knows absolutely nothing. But he is also an artist, and he has been drawing a variety of different things. He travels and he draws heritage stuff, and some of the art that he has included over here is part of a series in which he draws monuments and then superheroes or comics characters alongside those monuments. And I believe that he customizes these for the people he's sending the art to. So he knows me and my love for Spider-Man, and there is Spider-Man. Someone else might get Tintin. Someone else might get Death from the Sandman. So I'm not going to open this because I am keeping this art, but there are 4 pieces over here, heritage architectural drawings. I don't think all of them feature superheroes, so you might have like a with Spider-Man version and a without Spider-Man version, but I'm just going to keep it in plastic and wrapped until I can get them framed. So that's my first batch of comics from someone in India. Thank you very much, Alok. Any questions about... there we go. People are answering questions about Usagi Yojimbo. Yes, it's a superb comic. It isn't manga per se, because it's not created in Japan, but is deeply infused with Japanese culture and knowledge of Japanese history. It is starring anthropomorphic animals. I have a bunch of videos on Usagi Yojimbo. People over here are Usagi Yojimbo fans. It's really a terrific series. I think maybe the anthropomorphic animal thing puts some people off because they think it's a funny animal comic. And it is a funny animal comic, and it definitely has humor in it at times, but it also has drama. It also has... It's one of those things like the TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender that may not... it may not immediately give you an idea of how good it is because of the trappings you're looking at. And just like Avatar: The Last Airbender, which isn't technically anime because it is a US production, it is still so deeply influenced by anime. It's the same thing. It is influenced by manga. It is more, influenced by things like Lone Wolf and Cub, for example, and other samurai tales. So check out Usagi Yojimbo if you haven't already. Animated series coming soon for Usagi Yojimbo. Yes, it is set in the future, so it's a descendant of Usagi's, or the Usagi that we follow in the comic series. And so I think in that way it might be closer to Space Usagi than Usagi Yojimbo, the main series. But it's also, I think, from what I could tell, it's aimed at young children, which there's nothing wrong with. There's a lot of stuff that maybe ostensibly created for children that have good, and I know that Stan Sakai has been involved in the creation of that show. So, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the comic book. The comic book is terrific and fantastic. Any other questions about any of this? If those of you who know Alok can talk about Alok's skills and reputation in the comments. Just a second. All right, moving right along. See, no wasting time. My next, now there's a whole bunch of different things. So the next, I think I saw DB in the chat. So the next package that we received was from DB, who is a repeat offender as far as sending us packages, and not the only one today. And the reason why I had to open this package and not save it for an unboxing, because it was already a long time in transit and waiting as we moved and changed. But just like before, DB had stuffed this box full of candy. If you haven't seen my previous video, in which I'll link this, or someone can, maybe Ashwita can give a link. I have a couple of mealtime videos, and in an earlier one, I unboxed it in front of the camera so you can see my genuine first reaction to finding a box full of candy. And I think that the genuineness of that reaction must have spoken to DB, because he did the same thing. And I had to open it because I had to put the candy in the fridge in the Delhi summer. It's already suspect, but it was full of my favorite types of candy, which happen to be things like gummy lifesavers and Haribo gummy bears. So they can take a bit of they might survive a nuclear holocaust. They're those kind of foods, high preservative content, which I love. But I still had to open it and put it away. And I thought maybe for this video that I'd get out all that candy, but there's a lot of candy. So I have put that away in the fridge. And so we're only going to look at the comics he sent me. And this time he sent me Ice Cream Man, 5 trade paperbacks of this series from Image. Now, I've heard a lot about Ice Cream Man. There are a couple of people in the chat over here who've been praising Ice Cream Man since it started coming out, and they read it, issue by issue on Comixology or the digital platforms. And this, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the whole series. This is all 5 volumes, unless it's still continuing and going on. So this is very, very exciting. I think, well, I don't have volume 2 here because I was finishing reading it. I haven't read all 5 volumes. I've read the first 2 volumes, and I have these 3 volumes left to go. So that's 1 through 4 in volume 1, and 5 through 8 in volume 2. So that's where I've gotten to. I've gotten to Ice Cream Man number 8. And the reason I'm saying the number is because if you're not familiar, Ice Cream Man, and this is what I knew before I started reading this, Ice Cream Man is an anthology series, but not an anthology series by multiple contributors. It's an anthology where every issue is a separate story. And I knew that it had to do with horror or the supernatural, or at the very least a creepiness factor. But other than that, I had sort of tried to avoid spoilers because I knew that given how much people were talking about it, that I'd like to read it. And going through the first 2 volumes, it's interesting because in some ways this let me see if I can show you. There we go. This was not what I was expecting. So I think what I was expecting was a completely unrelated, completely apart in time and location sort of anthology stories that have a beginning and end, true, but they can also be any time. So it was maybe something like Tales from the Crypt, or those other well, we just saw Tales from the Crypt, but collections of that kind, or maybe like the Twilight Zone, where everything is individual, an individual capsule of a story. And while that is true to a certain extent, especially I think in the first couple, well, even in the first couple of episodes, there is, first of all, there is a sort of thematic or even some elements, like maybe a character or two who repeat across that. And one of them obviously is the ice cream man of the title. But again, I thought he would come across as either a Rod Serling character, from the Twilight Zone, or maybe when I started reading the stories and I read 2 or 3 of these stories, I thought maybe he was like, I'm forgetting his name, but from 100 Bullets, where you've got someone who shows up, has a briefcase, I'm going to solve your problems, or the crypt keeper, or someone just narrating. So are they going to be involved in the story? Are they going to be propelling the story, or are they just going to be observing the story like the watcher, or sort of giving us a commentary like the crypt keeper, bookending the story? I thought it was going to be one of those known things. At least in the first 8 issues, that is not the case. This does feel like a longer story, maybe. I don't know, I could be wrong. Don't give me any spoilers. I won't look at the comments. But this could be a longer story. It could be a more complex mythology. Definitely the ending of the last issue I read clearly indicated that something that we have seen before is picking up. But I also think that every individual issue, to a certain extent, can be read by itself. And also, honestly speaking, when I've read the first issue, I wasn't that sold on it. It didn't speak to me as a scary thing. Maybe that was because of my own expectations. It wasn't horror, it wasn't tense, but it also had this kind of slight loopiness that I couldn't quite place. I was like, I don't understand what the tone of this is. When I got to the second story, I thought it was a little better, and the third story was better. So I actually picked up steam in my reading as I was reading this. It is one of the most unusual comics I've read, especially from mainstream publishing like Image. I mean, I know some people say Image, they classify Image as indie publishing, particularly because it's creator owned, and there's something to be said about that. But still, there is sometimes, I think, a sort of brush that you can paint a certain kinds of fantasy storytelling with, where it's going to be like, oh, it's going to be odd for the sake of being odd, or it's going to be weird because it sounds good as a description, but I don't know exactly how the actual storytelling is going to be. I did have my doubts and reservations about the first issue, and to a certain extent the second issue, but now I think as I've read more, I'm more curious about this, because, as I was saying, it, I think, is very good at conjuring up a set. It's not a sense of horror, really. It's a sense of uneasiness. And I think that's slightly different. And I think if you adjust your expectations, particularly beyond the first issue, I think that might have something to do with my reaction, is that if you're expecting outright horror, if you're expecting something that's just going to scare you on a page-by-page basis, well, I mean, it might. And horror is a difficult thing to talk about because it affects different people so differently. But for me, what I felt, what a better kind of description of at least the 8 issues I've read so far, was one of uneasiness and the idea of dreaming. And in his note, DB did note that as well, and it's something that I think heard a couple of other people say, and which is right on the money, is that the sense of dreaming, or the sense of having a nightmare or being in a nightmare, I think is well captured by this comic. I think there are certain things that have done it well. The Sandman has had a couple of things in it that capture the sense of nightmare very well. I think David Lynch's movies and television or shorts, David Lynchian stuff, is that where the logic of it or the sense of it isn't something that you can spell out. It's not something you can connect or connecting the dots. And Ice Cream Man, I think, felt a little bit like that. The art style, I think, contributes a little bit. There is it's a unique sort of look which reminded me of Frank Quietly, or even a less detailed Jeff Darrow. Maybe it's that sort of clean lines. I'm not an art critic, or I don't have the right vocabulary, but it's very interesting in the way that the expressions seem to be sort of frozen in time, which is true for all comics art, but I think particularly with this kind of drawing, it reminds a little bit of Tony Moore. There is something about their faces being frozen in certain expressions, with the cheek or the jaw stretching a particular way or the eyes looking a particular way, that worked quite well. It's not to everyone's tastes. I can understand why some people may not like this art style, but I thought it worked really well for the stories, and the fact that they're not that easily decipherable was helped by the sort of inscrutability of the art, where you're like, is that a laugh, or is that pain, or is it a laugh becoming pain, or is it a pain becoming laugh? Those are the kind of things that I think came through really well. So although I would say it had a little bit of a rocky start, I think I'm warming up to it. Some people I was talking to about this did mention that they liked it on an episodic basis rather than reading story after story, to pick up and read one story. And I can completely see that. I understand that, because I think when you put multiple stories of Ice Cream Man back to back, you're trying to find a pattern, or you're trying to find a thread, or you're trying to say what unites them. But when you read them individually and then you recall that this element was also there in that other story, it's a slightly different experience. Not being a monthly, like a pull list reader, not being someone who reads single issues or as they're being published, a trade waiter is what I am. I've never quite. There have been some cases, but most of the time I don't like this idea of waiting for a month to read another issue or to read more of the story. And I don't like it as much as I like reading things all the way through. But something like this, I can understand. I completely get why you pick it up and you read it, and then next month. So time passes between one chapter and the next one. And I think this is something that the people I talked to were right about, that I think this might work really well on a month by month, or by having some gap between the stories, rather than trying to read them all in one go. Okay, all right, so that is DB and Ice Cream Man. And once again, thank you so much. I am there is also, Candy and Ice Cream Man both arrive together. I've been eating that candy constantly, and it's not going to last as long as I might want it to. But I will be continuing with Ice Cream Man soon. I think I will try to do this thing where I'll read a couple of stories together rather than one by one, especially because, as I said, by the end of issue number 8, it seemed like, oh, that's a cliffhanger, and I kind of understand it as a cliffhanger because of what has come before. So I'll see what works better for it going forward, reading continuously or reading one at a time. All right. Any questions about any of this? I did see people on. Hello. If you're just joining us, warm welcome. We've just gone through a couple of packages so far, but plenty left to go. Okay. Ashweta, are there any questions that are extremely pertinent to this and I should answer right now before I move on to the next one? I know there's a bit of a delay, so I'm going to continue anyway. Next up, taking a page from DB's book. The next package I got was also full of candy. And when I say full of candy, this was a lot of candy. Again, I thought I would bring it all out to show you. It didn't. It didn't seem feasible because of the humongous sack of candy that ended up coming out of that box. But this is from our good friend Tommy, who's in the chat right now, all the way from Sweden. And what was interesting and unique about this is Tommy packed this with Swedish candy. So none of these candies, whether they were the chocolate-based one or the gummy-based one or some of the, I had never seen or heard of any of these before, and this was a treasure trove of a variety of different things that not only looked and were unfamiliar in one way, but they were rather unfamiliar in taste and flavor as well. So not to make this for the love of candy, although that is a completely viable second name for this channel, but apparently licorice is very big in Sweden. I didn't know this, but I've never been a fan of licorice, but sometimes, like especially licorice jelly beans, with other flavors mixed in together, can add an interesting. It's a little too fennelly for me, and I've never quite understood the fenneliness in a candy. But there have been times when I've liked it as an accent or with something else, but Tommy was like, "No, you've got to try Swedish licorice. It's not like American licorice or other places. This is very unique." And I was like, "All right." And he sent a bunch of different types of licorice along with the comics and the books that he sent, and it's. I can see why it's an acquired taste. I will say that I have not, and neither has my wife Ashwita. Although we tried a couple of different ones, we haven't been converted to the church of licorice yet. There were some that were salty and not sweet at all, and there were some that were sweet and salt mixed together. It was definitely an experience. Now, there was a lot of other types of candy in there as well, including some delicious watermelon gummies. And again, I would have brought some out, but I've finished them all. So all I have is empty bags. And until this live stream started, I was debating whether I want to put these empty bags up there. But thank you very much for the candy. And now on to the comics. Eric says that it's wonderful how candy has become sort of a running gag. I don't want to discourage anyone from this at all. So I don't know, if you think it being a running gag means that I will get more candy sent to me, then by all means it's a running gag. But if you think it'll dissuade people, then I would like to dissuade people from thinking it's very, very it's very serious. I love candy. I really like gummy candy. I really love fruit flavors and berries and stuff like that. And there isn't a lot of variety in candy in India. You can get like baked goods, you can get chocolate, you can get some, the fancy sophisticated stuff, but the low down and dirty candy is still a rare enough treat for me to get really excited about. All right, so now what Tommy has been doing, we've been communicating about a number of different things, a couple of which will make their presence felt on this channel a little while later. But there are a number of bookstores, and I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about various things. So Tommy, you can talk about things that I don't have permission to talk about. But Tommy's very good at sourcing good deals and good prices, and there are a number of online sellers in Europe that he uses that I just don't have access to. And there are some books in that I've wanted for a long time, and there are some books that I've searched for a long time, and not necessarily because I love them, it's just because I'm curious about them. I've heard a lot about them, but I've never read them. And there are some other books that I should have picked up at a certain point of time and didn't. I'm sure everyone knows what that feels like. And these are the kind of things that Tommy's been really great about like saying, okay, this is available over here, and oh, did you ever pick up a copy of that? And would you like me to get you a copy of that? So which is wonderful, which is terrific. Now again, international shipping is incredible, and many of our tastes do wander towards the hardcover and the deluxe and things like that, which just adds to weight and adds to the cost of shipping. But even then, sometimes there are things that are either so well priced or so difficult to find, and it's all a personal thing, of course, that it's worth it. And so the comics that Tommy has sent are along those lines, comics that I've wanted for a while, comics that I've wanted to get my hands on and been unable to, and he's been able to find them for me. I'm sure every one of us has a lot of comics like that, and that's why all of us need friends like these who will be able to get things and then take the time and the effort to ship them across to us. So thank you very much. It's much appreciated, as I'm sure you know. There are a number of editions, and if those of you who haven't been on those of you who haven't been on the Discord channel, Friends of FTLOC, I'd strongly recommend it. I recommend it very highly all the time, is because there are so many experts in there, and from all around the place with such diverse reading habits, and they're asking each other questions, and it's just a warm place because it's about discovery. It's not really about, anyway, I'm not going to get into what it's not about. It's what it's about. What I've found so amazing about it is discovering so many new books and creators and things that I never even heard of. And then having people share what they found, what they saw, share their Goodreads reviews and stuff they've written in other places, and share those links and go through them. It's just a terrific place. So there are so many things, and I think particularly, we're always jealous of people in other countries, and sometimes I think people in India feel really jealous of people in Europe or people in the United States for the kind of things they have. But then I've heard from people who don't have access to the things that we have in India. So I guess it's all relative. There are things to be very thankful for, but particularly when you're not able to get something that you really want, or something that you really love, or something that you're very, very curious about, that jealousy does come up. So with the US, it's got to do with prices, and I think people who like Marvel and DC books and the omnibuses, these things become very expensive when they travel abroad. So the fact that they are sometimes so deeply discounted in the US is something that people feel very jealous of. Similarly, I think some people I know are extremely jealous of the editions that are published in Europe of material that just seem to be given a certain kind of respect and a certain kind of, in European languages, and a certain kind of production that looks fantastic. But they also that things that are out of stock or things that are out of print, just because something is out of print does not necessarily mean it's unavailable. You can still find it secondhand, and there are lots of things that are badly out of print. So you may ask, out of print is out of print. What's badly out of print and not badly? Well, badly out of print is it's not available even in the secondhand market. Now, what happens, Alok notwithstanding, is in a place like India, if something is out of print, it's out of print. You can get super lucky and buy it used off, say, another reader or collector, but the community or the readership is just burgeoning. So chances are not that likely. Maybe 2 or 3 other people have something that they want to get rid of, and finding that is very difficult. But usually you depend on publishers importing, and what publishers import are things that are in print. So if things go out of print, they become virtually impossible for us in India to get. I don't know if other people's experience is any different. So when something is not available over here and someone can find it used or on another kind of site somewhere else and ship it to you, it feels like a miracle has happened. So enough vacillating. Let me get to the books. These are books. Right, I can, as I said, move this microphone. All right. So these are books that, sorry about that. these are books that I've known about and that I've wanted to various levels. I'll start with Sea of Love. This, let me see. There we go. Right, this is a book that I first encountered, what was it, who keeps trying? It's like 2 or 3 years ago. And it's, in fact, my encounter with this book is part of one of my videos. I made a video called Indie Comics at an Indie Bookstore. When I was visiting my sister in Chicago, we went to this bookstore in Oak Park. And browsing those shelves, and I had my camera with me, so it's there, and I found this book and I put it down on the carpeted floor and looked through it, and it looked really pretty and looked really beautiful and very interesting. And I didn't pick it up because I picked up other books at that point of time, and I figured that I could pick it up later because it had stuck in my mind. Then when I got back to India and I tried to find it, I couldn't find it, or I could find it, but it was very expensive and it wasn't at the price, blah, blah, blah. So this is something that Tommy found, and it's in brand new condition. I don't know if it's out of print or not, but here, let me see if I can. I am now going to try. There, can you see this? Is this working? All right, okay, so this is a silent comic. That it's a wordless comic. It's done only in images, and that is something that I had noticed even at that point of time when I had picked it up in the bookstore. If you're interested, you can check that that moment in history. You can check that out in that video, and I'm so glad to have been able to get my hands on it. I did read this story. It is, in some ways, it's a fast read because it's silent and there isn't text to read. So with these kind of comics, and there are several, the comics of Thomas Ott, The Arrival by Sean Tan, the big examples that I've given before on this channel. But there's a danger of reading textless comics too fast, so you almost have to will yourself to slow down. But what I found marvelous about this comic is, in spite of its cartoonish, almost children's book illustration style, there's definitely a weight to it. There's definitely, shape. The shapes over here seem solid, so it's not flimsy. But in spite of that, it is very impressive. So that slowing down to take your time isn't really that difficult. It's a nautical tale of this old man who goes out fishing, and the variety of encounters that he has, as well as his wife waiting at home. I don't want to give too much away. I don't even want to turn too many of these pages, but sometimes when you want something, or you caught a glimpse of something and then you can't have it, there's a tendency to, I think, build things up as like, oh, the one that got away, fish story. But this is one of those cases where it lives up to it. I remember that, and I've gone back to that video of mine also to check, and it was like, was I really, that was interesting, wasn't it? Wasn't that, and the narrative of this and the way that it is presented, I think, is just gorgeous. There is a writer and an artist, even though there isn't words. And I think in the case of, say, Sean Tan, in the case of Thomas Ott, we may say that, all right, you don't need a writer because you have an artist, and the artist is the person who's putting everything together. Here's a silent comic that has a writer and an artist. So if the questions ever come up, like, what does a writer do other than write words? I mean, I don't think that question comes up that much, but here you go. Here's an example of what a writer does, even if there aren't any words to be written. But I think apart from the technical or those kind of considerations, I just think that this is just a beautiful story. It's quite affecting. It's quite lovely. It's funny. It's sad. It can be a little dark, but nothing compared to what we consider dark. So I'm very happy to get my hands on this at long last. A Sea of Love, published by Lionforge Press. It's one of the earliest encounters with Lionforge Press I had at that point of time. I've obviously read a couple since then, but this book, I did encounter this book before I read Upgrade Soul, which is another big comic from Lionforge. They also, I think, have Magnetic Press, so the love comics, Love the Tiger, Love the Dinosaur, have also been published by Lionforge. So there you go. A Sea of Love. I did read another book by Lupano while waiting for this, which we found online, The Hartlepool Monkey. That was also a very good comic, sort of satirical take on, apparently based on a true story of a French ship that was sunk off the coast of England, and their monkey mascot made it onto the shore but was tried as a French prisoner of war. It's really, really an interesting story. But that was the other book by Lupano that I've read, and now I have read A Sea of Love. Okay. How am I doing for time? Am I running out of time? Yeah, I'll share images from these on our community page over here on Facebook, etc. I know it goes by really fast, but yeah, I can't recommend that book highly enough. That was very beautiful. Another comic that I've wanted for a while is actually not just a comic, a creator that I've heard a lot about and never really read anything by, is Michael DeForge. I've read one thing, which was an issue of his sporadically published comic Lose. So I read Lose number 4, and it was very odd and it was very strange, and yet it was compelling. Michael DeForge's art style was weird, to say the least, not very descriptive, but it was... I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, but I've heard a lot of people speak very highly of Michael DeForge, but also say things like, well, he's an acquired taste, or say, well, he's not for everyone. And I know what they mean because I've seen his art style. And one thing that almost universally people seem to say is his book Ant Colony is his most accessible. And if you want to start reading Michael DeForge, you should start with Ant Colony. Or even if you don't like most Michael DeForge, you will like Ant Colony. And this is one of those things that used to sit in my wish list, and other books would always overtake it, because you're like, oh, that's going to be work, to read that. It's going to demand things of me. Maybe I'll save it for the next one. And that kept happening until it went out of print, or it became unavailable here in India at least, and then the price jumps to like 5,000 rupees or something if there's a copy, and then you kick yourself. So yet again, Tommy to the rescue did locate for me a copy of Ant Colony. Now, if you're not in India and if you're in other countries, you may say, well, what's the big deal? I saw that for like $5. And that's the point. That's the point I'm making, is that for some people, it's just something you find and it's easily available, and for some other people, it's not. But primarily because of Michael DeForge's reputation and the reverence with which people speak about him, I was very, very curious about this, and I've. So the way that it's been phrased to me is that if anything stands a chance of getting you to love Michael DeForge, it's going to be Ant Colony, and then it'll be the rabbit hole opener, and then you'll discover more, and you can read more and things like that. And having heard that a number of times, that's the book I wanted. So here it is. I'll give you a little bit of I don't know anything about this comic other than the fact that it's about an ant colony. But of course, that can't be, it can't be what you're expecting because of the artist involved, and that's the style of this book. These are the ants. That's the queen ant. Bright colors, weird shapes. I'm not even looking at the text yet. So this is something you can tell. I think maybe you can understand why I was a little concerned, in which I was just like, well, and that's why you don't want to pay 4,000 rupees, because what if it isn't good? What if it isn't something that you enjoy? So it is something that I've been looking forward to reading. It is something that I think is, because it's been in conversation, because people have talked about it, I feel, and that happens to me very often, and I don't have expectations of like, oh, it's going to be amazing, it's been well disclaimed to me that you may not like it may not be your kind of thing. But one thing that I've really enjoyed since I got back into reading comics seriously as an adult, is what I've really enjoyed is seeing what people do with the medium. It's not just one type of storytelling or one type of genre, etc. And that's some of my favorites have come because you step outside your comfort zone and try something. And so therefore I'm always down to give things an attempt, and that doesn't mean I'm going to stick to something if I don't enjoy it. I have no problems abandoning a book halfway through if I am just not liking it. Life's too short to have like some sort of fake commitment to the cosmetic crossing of that barrier. Oh, I finished that book, etc. With a movie or something, there's a limited amount of time. So what's the worst? Okay, 2 hours, and I can abandon a movie too if it's like really getting on my nerves. TV shows definitely. So it's the same way with comics. If I don't enjoy something, I have no problem saying I didn't enjoy it. It doesn't matter if a lot of people think it's fantastic, but I'm really intrigued. This looks terrific to me. It looks wonderful. But what I'm really curious about is that accessibility. I want to see where that accessibility lies for Ant Colony. So I'm really happy to get my hands on it and finally take a crack at it. I hope I don't have to steal myself too much. Trippiness. That trippiness thing, that's what I'm interested in, because I understand, when people say that art style isn't appealing, and I think I heard people say this about Ice Cream Man. I've heard this about everything in some way or the other. There are people who don't. Okay, maybe there's nobody who doesn't like Darwin Cook's art. Maybe that's one of the exceptions, but there are people who don't like Will Eisner's art. There are people who don't like Matt Kint's art or Jeff Lemire's art. There are people who don't like Chris Ware's art. There are people who don't like Dan Klaus's art. So it's not about, like what I want to know is, how did you harness this for storytelling, and what kind of a story did you tell, and did it work, and did it do the thing that you wanted it to do? And that's where the unusualness comes from. I think a lot of many comics that I see that don't appeal to me is because the art looks just like every other art. It looks like I can't tell the difference. I can't distinguish between this person and that person because they're all sort of doing the same thing. So that's less interesting to me. And when something definitely stands out, if you can look at something and say that's Lily Carey, for example, it means something. That means that they've done something. It's not only art though, and that's the main thing, is that even if something looks gorgeous on one page, it may not fit into the story, it may not do a good job in the story. And I think the reverse is true. Something that doesn't look great as a poster might be just fantastic in the story because of the story. And in comics, I do lean towards narrative a bit more. I'm not I've tried some abstract comics and varying levels of success. I do like narrative. I don't have to have it be linear. I don't have to have it be purely logical, realistic, or anything like that. But even within that, I think there's a lot of room, and that's why a book like Ant Colony is so appealing to me. Right. Do not like DeForge. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this is fine. I want to see what this does, and and also I want to be part of the conversation. So if there are all these people saying, "Oh, he's great," and all these people saying, leaves me cold, I kind of want to know where I fall on that as well. That happens, and it's been a long time. It's like I've never read any Michael DeForge. There are some people like that. I think it happens. It happens with everything. It happens with movies or books. There's some things where you're like, I don't want to read it because everyone talks about it and I'm not interested. And then there are other things where you're like, man, I really want to read it because everyone talks about it and I want to be part of that conversation. So it can go both ways. For me, Michael DeForge is in that thing, but I completely understand why. As people have told me, why he wouldn't be everyone's cup of tea. But still, I'm glad to get the book and have it in hand when it is hard to find, and it is something that I did want to seek out. Yeah, right. There we go. Okay. And this is something that I have not yet even opened from the plastic, again because I wanted to make sure that I was unpacked and all the paint flakes or whatever, everything around didn't damage this. And this is Pinocchio by Winchless, which some of you may know about, some of you may not know about, some of you may like, some of you may hate, because this is another one of those things that has a very interesting reputation. But unlike Michael DeForge or Ant Colony or even some of the other things we've seen over here, unlike that, I've actually read this book. And this was many years ago. I was visiting I don't have to get into the whole thing, but I was over at a friend of a friend's place, and they knew, or they heard then, that I was really into comics, and they have a fantastic comics collection, and they were like, "Have you read this? Have you read this?" So of course, that thing happens, and books were pulled out, and they were like, "Have you read Winchless's Pinocchio?" And I was just like, whose is what? Who's Winchless? And then it's one of those things. While we sat around and drank a cup of tea, they went and picked up the book, and they were like, "Here, you should read this." So I sat and I read it, and I read it over there, sitting at their place, and I enjoyed it. It's a sort of dark take on Pinocchio. It is definitely adult. It is tongue-in-cheek in some ways. It is macabre in certain other ways. And some other times just feels like puncturing a fairy tale sort of darkness. So it's that kind of a thing. But it's also got very interesting art. It also has an interesting take on how it wants to interpret Pinocchio, which has been interpreted in so many different ways, like Peter Pan. What do you mean with this thing of being a real boy? And you can have Pinocchio variations in a lot of things like Astro Boy or Pluto, you androids and humanity, and those are themes, I think, that can be explored in a variety of ways. And that's why I liked this take, which was neither steampunk nor dystopian, but had a sort of industrialized edge to it. And that's how Pinocchio is. I'm trying very desperately to open this plastic, but I'm also worried that I don't want to show material that some people might find offensive, etc. So I don't know if I want to go ahead and but yeah, I'm taking the plastic off it right now, because when I read it, I liked it. I liked it as a dark tale, and I liked it as a take on Pinocchio. So I'm always interested in adaptations of very famous stories. I think particularly certain stories, they tend to get well, you call it the Disneyfication effect or what have you. They tend to get sanitized and they tend to get cleaned up and brushed up. And this is true for Grimm's fairy tales. It's true for the stories of Hans Christian Andersen. They often have within them, and it's same for myths and legends, particularly when people use it for their own, storytelling purposes. They do tend to sanitize things, and they then do tend to sand over things. So I like revisionist takes, not because I think they're oh so edgy, but because sometimes I feel they are going in the other direction. They're just saying that this already existed in the original story. What if I magnify it instead of amputating it? What if I play up that part of it instead of pretending that's not part of the story? So I think it's kind of a nice counterbalance to the kind of simplification and abridgment and the kind of things that we usually do with famous stories. So I'm all for all kinds of adaptation. Plus, this book has very handsome production, as you can see. Maybe you can see with spot lamination and foil. It's beautifully designed, and the artwork inside is very interesting. And it does change from what I remember. So I'm looking at this for the first time since I read it then. It does change a lot from chapter to chapter, depending on the kind of part of the story you're in. And it tells the story of this little robot boy by this inventor and his adventures. But it's just a question of the darkness, and it's a question of how, and your tastes might vary. You may feel not necessarily that, oh, Pinocchio is untouchable and it shouldn't be messed with or something like that, but you may just feel that it's too much. You may feel that it's too dark or it's too violent or something along those lines. And again, I would completely understand that. It's just something that really worked for me. It's something that stuck in my head since I read it, and I wouldn't call it the greatest comic I've ever read or something like that, but it was indelible. It did make an impression. So I think because of that, I have an indication that it's something worthwhile to me. Because if you can't get something out of your head, if you find yourself returning to it, I've found that it is it's usually a sign of something having worked in spite of yourself sometimes. The artwork over here, as you see, is changing. The styles change. The stuff about the cockroach is the Jiminy Cricket stuff from the Walt Disney movie. Again, a very different and uglier take on it, but it is also quite beautiful. It is gorgeous in some ways, even when what it is depicting is quite stark. But I think that's there, and I just remembered that, of course, one of the best takes on Pinocchio, in my opinion, was the Steven Spielberg movie AI, which again a lot of people hate and a lot of people find cheesy or schmaltzy, which I have a different. But that movie too had this kind of core darkness, which in some sections of that movie just sort of erupted outward. There's a particular flesh fair sequence in which the robots are being destroyed by the bloodthirsty humans who hate technology, etc. It's an indelible moment, and I think that's the type of take on Pinocchio that you can think of this book being. It's not obviously an exact correlation, but it is along those lines. So just like so in this way, this is a complete counter negative photo negative of say something like A Sea of Love, which is very warm, very tender, gorgeous, beautiful, laid out, and so it's similar in some ways and very different in other ways. And that's Pinocchio by Winchless. All right, is everyone still here? Is everyone with me? All right, looks like they are. Park Bench from Shabute is my favorite silent comic. Absolutely, that is really good. Park Bench is terrific, and Alone, I think, is a masterpiece as well. I will make a list of my top 10 silent comics at some point of time. I started making that list once, but I felt like I needed to read more. You don't want to make a top 10 if you've only read 25 or even 30. I think you should only make a top 10 if in that category that you're making a top 10, you have... I'm being facetious. It's not a must or anything like that. But I think you should you should have read at least 50 to make a top 10. Probably more. It would be good if it's 100. So if you've got 100 sci-fi books that you've read, then you can make a top 10 books. If you've read 50 sci-fi books, then make a top 5 sci-fi. That's the way I'd go about it. So silent, I think I think I might still need a few more to get to 100, then I can say that all right, these are the best, the 10 best from that. All right, so that is that for another look at Pinocchio by Winchless. Very handsome production. I'm very happy to have this. Thank you. And finally, along with the candy and these books, Tommy threw in a surprise. This is Belzebubs. Now, this is not something that I knew was coming in this package. I only discovered it when I opened it to get my candy out. This, well, let me show you. There we go. This is, wait, I wonder if I can zoom in. Oh, I can. This is a book that, as he's saying in the chat right now, this is a book that is pure evil, which is the way that Tommy has represented this to me about a death metal band, family, darkness, soul crunching, demonic, Satan worshipping, death metal, black metal. I have to say that I know nothing about metal, let alone death metal or black metal or anything like that. But having read this book now, I do believe that I've been bamboozled, because this is actually a very sweet, very funny, borderline tender comic. It's a gag comic. I think another one of my friends, Abhishek, might be in the comments over here, has read this as a web comic, I think. So I did not know about this comic at all. I know nothing about black heavy metal. I know nothing about metal of any kind as far as music is concerned. I do know about the trappings, but that would probably be the most cliche stuff, that people who aren't with it think about things. But this is it works really well. I can see this working really well as an episodic comic that you get one installment a day. And when you have a series of them put together, you start building that picture of the characters and their relationships. So it's very much like an old-fashioned newspaper strip. But if you think of something like, I would say something like the Addams Family would be the most obvious comparison, although obviously there are differences, but it's that sort of, here's a ghoulish take on comedy, but also looking upon them as units of family or friendship and things like that. I recently read Sarah Anderson, who does Sarah's Scribbles. I read her book Fangs, which is about a vampire who falls in love with a werewolf. But it's one of those webcomic type of things where you get one gag strip a day or one a week or something like that. And I read it in the collected book form, and that's what this would be the most reminiscent of for me, is that yes, it's about vampires and werewolves, but it's actually a sweet little romance. It's actually making fun of those kind of things. Now, I have been told by people who know better than me that this series, Belzebubs over here, is actually very rich and textured as far as references to heavy metal is concerned. Song lyrics and song titles and band names apparently are peppered through this as puns and references, maybe in the background, maybe on a t-shirt, maybe as a quote someone is saying. I know obviously none of those things. I knew none of those things, and I still enjoyed it thoroughly. So I can't think of a better sort of testament to something being accessible, and that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy, is when I watch something that I'm a fan of in some ways, and it does make me happy and it does give me Easter eggs and references, but it works equally well for someone who doesn't get any of it. I think that is a terrific tightrope act. I think you can definitely make something good and funny that you have to get as a reference, and I think a lot of memes, etc., work on that. It's like, if you've seen the show, then you'll get it. If you haven't seen the show, it won't make any sense to you whatsoever. So there is still skill in doing that, and people, but it's for a closed group of people. It's for people in the know. I think the ones that can do it for people in the know and for people not in the know have a particular extra level of skill being applied, and that's what I think of this, and that's what I think of the best kind of thing. So I'm interested in knowing that there are all these references, etc., but as a absolute noob, I mean less than that, I've someone who knows nothing about metal or anything at all, this worked fine for me. It's very funny, it's very cute, it's very charming. And don't believe anyone who tells you that this is about evil and it's about Satan worship, etc., etc. It isn't. It's a lot of jokes about it, is what it is. So a very pleasant surprise, but of course, primarily because I was misled on the type of book it is. So thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of Tommy's box, which I tell you, if you put together all of these books, hardcover books, the candy probably weighed more than all these books put together. So that's only half of the package. All right, now moving on. Okay, let me first quickly check on if there are any questions that I should answer. Hello to anyone joining now. Hi, Tyler. Ashwita says that Sarah Anderson's fangs reminded her of What We Do in the Shadows. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good equation. It's not as slapstick funny. It's a little bit more, but you can see the author of Sarah's scribbles, which is a very good webcomic and a series of comics that have now been altered and memed. It's a great series about observational comedy. Is about life and speaking truths of who we are and how we feel, but also to do with the way we live in urban lifestyles and relationships and what really matters. So it's that kind of stuff. Very, very sweet, very, very focused on the human relationships, or in that case the non-human relationships at the center of the thing. Thank you very much. All right, now the next box that I have is the next two things. Now there are only two boxes left, and I say only, but neither of these have been opened by me, so they're very much in their box form. I have not looked inside them at all, and I just realize right now that I have no knife or box cutter, so that was very smart of me. I'm going to see if I can use a ballpoint pen. Let's see. Oh, it's heavy too. Okay, so I'm just going to show you. This is a big, heavy box from Parikshith from Bangalore. I don't think he's in Bangalore right now, or these were bought in Bangalore and then shipped to me. I don't know whether it was from that, but thank you so much. I've been waiting for this opening for a while now. I've got to zoom my camera back out for this box. Okay. And a box cutter has magically appeared next to me thanks to the moderator of this chat. Thank you so much, Ashwita. All right, so shall we take a look at this box? I'm not going to... And this is why I've always been a little iffy about live unboxings, because it can take forever to open a box, and then you've got to be so careful about a number of different things, and then when you do open the box you won't know what you're looking at. So I am going to take this as a test drive of whether I should do any more such things in the future, or if this is best left to be off screen. But this is I have a little bit of an idea of what's in this box, because over chat, in the Discord server, etc., I have talked to Parikshith about what he is finding and looking for in Bangalore. Bangalore, I mean, I was just talking about how used books and used comics are not necessarily something everyone can get, but Bangalore has a couple of places. One of them, the most famous bookstore, Blossom, and these, if I am not wrong, are from that bookstore. These are things that Parikshith has found in Bangalore that he knows that I'm looking for and that I'm interested in, and he has kindly picked them up for me and shipped them over here. So I continue to be overwhelmed and grateful, but also I was not expecting this box to be this big. From what I had gathered, I was expecting this to be much smaller. So, well, pardon me while I tear and try to get this stuff. All right, here we go. Enough of politeness. I can't. Oh, there is a note over here. Well, Parikshith says, I hope you receive the books in good shape. There's some out of print. Yes, I'm not going to read the whole thing over here because there might be something that's only for me, but I don't. If you can see, we start with Tintin. Whoa, what is that? All right, I'm gonna have to take this. Okay, now this is the part of the live stream where I will go silent because I have no idea what to look for or what I'm expecting in here. Wow, all right, these are, I believe, European comics, all of them. And these are European comics found in India, but not found very... Tintin Snowy 1. What is this? All right. If people know in the chat already, you can start putting it up there. Tintin Snowy and Captain Haddock need your help to solve some brain-boggling puzzles and mysteries they encounter on their adventures. All right. This is... Okay, I'm going to try to figure out... No, there we go. You don't need to look at me when we're looking at this. Discover lots of fascinating facts about Tintin, his friends and enemies, the amazing places he has visited. Ooh, okay. So this is like a puzzle. Oh, look at that. It is a little Tintin primer. And quizzes. Quizzes with multiple choice. Oh, that's absolutely adorable. I have not ever seen a Tintin book like this. I'm not surprised that it exists, of course, but that is terrific. Little facts and factoids. This is definitely for young readers, but look at how much art. Oh, and and calculus's inventions. All right, I can see that this is going to be something that is going to entertain people. There is a lot of different kinds of stuff in here. That's fantastic. And it says 1, so that means that there are probably more of these out there. Yeah, there's like a who's who in it. There's puzzles in it. Very, very cool. Let's see what else we have. Biggles. Squadron Biggles. These are... I don't know how many of you know about these sort of war comics. I believe Biggles was in the RAF. I know that there were a number of Biggles novels, stories written by, I think, more than one author, or like authors continuing. And I know that there are Biggles comics, but I've never read them. I certainly have seen them. Yeah, they seem Air Force comics. And this is published by Eurobooks. So these are it. All right, so you've got a list of how many Biggles adventures in comics form there are. Superb. Oh, wow, look at that. That is a quick and fluke. Long live progress. This is a series by Hergé that I have never read. I have obviously heard a lot of people talking about this. Oh, and there's a list of titles in this series about these two characters, Quick and Fluke. And now I have my very first Quick and Fluke. Thank you. Oh, look at that art. Very reminiscent of Tintin, of course. Hergé style is unmistakable. Studios Hergé. I don't know a lot about Quick and Flupke, so I'll be looking into that. Terrific stuff. And Spirou and Anastasio. I knew that he had found a couple of these. These are the ones that I knew. These other ones I wasn't really aware of. But here you've got 1, 2, the Wizard of Cul-de-Sac, the Prisoner of Buddha. These are all Eurobooks editions. I did pick up one of these on Amazon. I got lucky and I'd found it, and I think they appear in one of my recent reads and new acquisitions videos. But this is fantastic. This is, I mean, I've never been able to find more than that one. And so the Horn of the Rhinoceros. Oh, there's more. So there's three Spirou and Fantasio. Yes, Fantasio. 3 Spirou and Fantasio. 4th one is the Marsupilami Robbers. That's what it says. Okay. And there's more. It just keeps going. This is a very deep box. Oh my goodness. Spirou and the Heirs. I apologize for that deeply. This is a sort of awkward angle to get stuff out of the box, but the Dictator and the Mushroom. Oh, man. All right, this is, I don't want to keep hitting the microphone with each book, so I am going to, oh, it just keeps going and going and going. Look at that. There are the Black Hats and Other Adventures, the Morav's Hideout, the Gorilla Gold Adventure. This is actually the one that I was able to find on Amazon. I guess I have 2 copies of it now. And the Robot Blueprints and 4 other stories. So there's shorter stories and longer adventures. This seems to be a thick one. All of these published by Eurobooks. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So just to recap these, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Spirou books. That is quite, sorry, I apologize, 10 Spirou books. That is quite an instant library. That's just amazing. I'm stunned. Thank you so much. Now I have no excuse not to attempt a Spirou Anastasio video once I get through reading all of these. There's also this Quick and Flupke, this Biggles, and this Tintin puzzle book, and we're not done with the box yet. So the unboxing continues. I think I'm going to just reach in and pull them out over here. Aha, these are books. These are Isno goods. This is another European comics series that I have a couple of adventures of, but these are 3-in-1 hardcover editions collecting 3 adventures, and in that, you know, that Franco-Belgian album size. So it's not a small comic, which sometimes when you have these 3-in-1 editions, collections, they tend to shrink the size, most horrifically in the case of Tintins, which have become really small. I also had a video on the new Asterix paper cuts albums that have also been shrunk for the US printing. It's really lovely to see things that will be collected together, does give you that value for money in 3-for-1. I think there was another 3-for-1 of Lucky Luke that I picked up, a 3-for-1 that was again shrunken down in size. So I'm very happy to see this, what I would say is the full size, the regular size for these 3-in-1 hardcover reprints of Is No Good, who's like a vizier and up to no good, as the title tells you. So you've got another one over here, the Diabolic Days of Is No Good. I'll have to look through which albums are in each, but that's three hardcover editions of Is No Goods, containing 3 each. So that's 9 Is No Goods on top of everything else. So thank you so much. Wow. And oh, wait a minute, I left something at the bottom of the box, and it's another Is No Good. There we go, the 4th one, which makes 12 adventures collected in these 3-in-1 hardcovers. Also from Eurobooks. I'm not sure, is Eurobooks still publishing all these books? Let me know in the chat. Or I mean, are they out of print? Have they stopped being circulated? I know that there are some that I see from Cinebooks, and then there are some from Eurobooks, but it seems like the Eurobooks ones aren't really as common, or maybe I'm just not looking in the right place. Amazon is not really the right place to be shopping for these type of books, as I said. As Parikshith knows, as Alok earlier we were talking about knows, you got to step out and actually go out there in order to be able to get your hands on them, or you can just have people send them to you, which is, you know, working out pretty well for me, I would say. Thank you so much. That's just fantastic. The publishers are no longer in business. Yeah, see, these are out of print editions, and you know, especially I think when I look at editions like this, I get the feeling that not many people will pursue this kind of production. No, they won't publish these kind of books. I don't know why. It seems that the popularity, the pricing should match. Maybe it's just a question of, because Tintins are sort of evergreen, Asterix adventures seem to be evergreen. They don't seem to go out of print, and they seem to be constantly in supply. I wonder why that isn't the case for all Franco-Belgian or even other European comics classics. Why do they not have the kind of presence across the world when you have so much more? Maybe as comics reading catches on more and more, although honestly I think I've been waiting for that for the last 30 years or so. I'm really happy to have these. Like, I just get the feeling that this kind of 3-in-1 hardcover full album size thing is not that common, or is not going to be that common. That's fantastic, and that's why the used bookstores where you can find them are real areas of potential treasure, as you can see over here. Thank you so much, Parikshith. I will read this note in detail and get back to you. And that, I think, yep, I think that's it. That's it for this box, and that is all we have. That's all we have from viewers. There's one package left. That's the last one over here. Yeah, it's a hefty haul of a box. There's one package left over here, which is something from a creator, someone whom I have featured on the channel. Does anybody want to take any guesses? It's maybe I shouldn't play games. Just give me a second. Okay, so we have over here a package from Jason Shiga, who I love. I have a video called The Devious Genius of Jason Shiga, talking about 4 of his comics. And in that video, alongside my hefty praise for his works, Meanwhile, Demon, Empire State, but also I did mention in that, which is the one I'm leaving out? Book Hunter. All terrific comics, especially the the absolutely madcap profane demon. But I'm a big fan of Meanwhile as well. There's I did mention in that video that I love these books, and these are books that I can get in stores, but I've seen online that he's published a number of comics, or he's got a lot of mini comics or zines that he has published over the years, and some of them, one of them I linked at the in the video description as well, are online, but the vast majority of them are just not things that we get over here in India. And so Jason Shiga saw that video, he liked it very much, he shared it as they, and then he wrote to me asking me for my address, saying that, well, since you can't get my mini comics or zines over there, I'll send you some. And that is what this package is. This is a collection of comics from Jason Shiga by Jason Shiga that I would never have any chance of getting over here. This is just not, I mean, we can barely get comics, let alone, so actually, here we go. All right. Here we have mini comics from Jason Shiga, starting with The Last Supper. This is a handmade comic. In fact, I think I had seen a YouTube video. Just a little bit of zoom. I'd seen a YouTube video on the assembly or the dissemination of this particular comic. I think it's handmade. It's hand lettered and painted, and you fold it and you fold it according to so you get the idea, the unfolding. And here's your choose your adventure choice. Which way do you want to go? Do you want to go this way, or do you want to go this way? This is just superb stuff. I love it. I loved it when I saw a little bit of it, and I am so thrilled to have my own copy of The Last Supper. If I'm not wrong, Jason Shiga has a video on how you can make your own choose your own adventure comic, which, if you are of the artistic inclination, I would love to see people do more of this kind of stuff. This is just playing with the format, playing with storytelling. It's just, as I was saying in my video, Jason Shiga is one of the most unabashedly gleeful comics creators I know. His comics bring me so much joy, make me laugh, and he just seems to have such a blast making these kind of things. And it's not just a gimmick. The way the stories are, the way the characters are, the way he solves problems have been superb. I can't wait to try The Last Supper in a little bit more detail. Oh, sorry. I was just checking to see if the second camera was on or not. I wasn't sure. All right. So what else do we have? Spot the differences. SpongeBob number 42. Is this a SpongeBob SquarePants comic by Jason Shiga? Special interactive issue. Spot the differences. Okay. Wait. Is it? I cannot at this. I'm trying to take a look to see if there are. Oh, there they are. Design and press, Paul Shooter, Bongo Comics Group, publisher. Wait, where's the? Oh no, this is. Well, I don't know if Jason Shiga is involved in this. I don't think one of these is the creator, but it is an interactive comic, and I think it kind of plays with the same kind of things that Jason Shiga himself does. And I'm guessing that this all new X-Men is along the same lines. Otherwise, it's an interesting thing to be. This is all new X-Men Monumental 25th issue. What is this? This is why Brian Michael Bendis. Okay. Bruce Timm, Arthur Adams, David Mack, Scotty Young. Well, it seems to be a top-notch roster, so I guess it's an anthology comic, but maybe it's just a cool comic. I don't know. I'll have to find out. If you know what's special about All New X-Men or what makes it fit into this box of Jason Shiga comics, let me know. I'd love to know. Here's another one. Philip's head, what is now considered a fairly pedestrian tool, was once the lifelong obsession of one tormented soul. Wow, is this about the invention of the Phillips head screwdriver? I think it is. All right, another little zine mini comic, The Wonderful World of Shiga. There you go. Wow. Yeah, these are just the kind of things that I'm glad to see the Indie Comics Fest in India pick up steam while it was and create things like this, things that are just so uniquely the work of their creator and what their creator wants to do, and reaching out straight to the reader for subscriptions. I mean, this is how we used to read comics way back in the day as well. Of course, you could never, being in India, you would get a comic like 3 years after it's been published. There's nowhere to mail it into. You can't buy the hostess cupcakes or whatever it was being advertised over there, Cracker Jack popcorn. It is sort of bittersweet, but yeah, this is again reminiscent of those kind of things, and this is a big fat book. This is Knock Knock. There's a hole punched in there. I don't know if you can see. It goes through over. Maybe that's for. Well, that's definitely Jason Shiga art. Do not read this book straight through. Hey, look, this is like a choose your adventure. Instead of one linear story, this book splits off into many different adventures. The story you read depends on the choices you make. At the bottom of every page is a panel filled with black dots. All right, there's the panel filled with black dots. To interact with an object under the dot, turn to the page number indicated by the dot. All right, so well, there you go. This is essentially like a comics version of games like Myst, or even, I mean, I'll age myself if I name all the games that came before Myst, but that point and investigate, click and investigate. This is literally, if you want to look at the lamp, turn to page 7 and follow the page number of the dots. So, wow, this is a complete new Jason Shiga book for me. I had no idea that this existed, and it seems very much in line with Meanwhile and this little number over here, The Last Supper, and the new book that Jason Shiga is currently working on, The Box, which he's been working on for a long time, which is probably going to be a massive version of Meanwhile, which is, I think, also an interactive comic. And I know that he works on interactive comics and education so much. So this is truly exciting. A book that I did not know existed, which is another Jason Shiga choose your own adventure story. Fantastic. Well, there we go. Is Knock Knock available for purchase? It's a good question. I don't know. I don't see any copyright information on it. But I have literally just unboxed it. So, but I don't see anything inside it that even has a publisher name. So, wow, yeah, and it just ends with the last page. So, is a rare self-published work by Jason Shiga. Ashwita says, wow, this is a point-and-click comic. Yes, exactly. That's fantastic. This is amazing. I don't believe it's. I mean, I don't doubt that it's rare, because I have done a fair amount of searching for Jason Shiga comics, and I have not heard of this. I might just point to bad research on my part. But yes, it seems completely self-published, no copyright information, no barcode, no ISBN at all. But fantastic. If any of you have, if you have not watched my Jason Shiga video, I would really recommend it, because those are comics that I've really loved, and I tried in that video to give you a sense of what I love about them, but also showed you how different his approach can be, even though he uses the same style, but also how he's not interested in just simple stuff, how he must, it seems to me, play with things, whether it's genres, whether it's format, whether it's layout, whether it's the way that the reader reads. And there are a lot of people, Jason Shiga, but also like people like Jason. And I think connecting to what I was talking about earlier is people who stand out as unique, people who stand out as very themselves. Their work is just their own work. It's not just recognizable, but it's got a certain flavor to it. It's got a certain texture to it that you don't get anywhere else. Those are things that always have a very good chance of appealing to me. Obviously, how you execute it, but they just start off higher because you know that that much thought and consideration has gone into it, where it's about something very unique. It's not about something pre-digested or something that you've seen 100 times before, because it's coming straight from their brain. So very exciting stuff. But thank you everyone for joining me on this rather chaotic, but I hope entertaining look at some of the new arrivals, specifically from people mailing them in to me. Thank you very much for everyone who sent these in. I'll be spending a lot of time reading through these books and going through these comics. It's just magnificent, this kind of generosity, and I'm really looking forward to a time where this can become like more of an exchange. I want to explore ways of maybe doing giveaways with comics that I receive, and definitely trading and getting things to other people. The logistics and the costs and all of these things are such a I mean, I know how difficult they are, which makes me appreciate the effort of people all that much more. So thank you everyone. Thank you for the ones who sent me these comics. Thank you for everyone who joined me to watch this, and I will soon have a video on other recent reads and new acquisitions, ones that I purchased myself, choosing to read, but I just want to finish reading a couple of those. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks. As I said, I've got a whole bunch of videos planned. I've got a whole bunch of requests that I thought were really good ideas that I need to get to. Hopefully they will be coming sooner rather than later. So I think that's it for this video. Thank you everyone for joining me. Have a good night, evening, rest of the Sunday for everyone.